Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to the video, and make sure to wipe your feet on the way in. We're gonna try to relax and get comfortable in this video with an anime that is fresh and relaxing, at least most of the time. Winter of 2024 was a bit of a doozy, wasn't it? From the shows that rolled over from fall of 2023 to the new stuff, we were just swimming in great anime last season, so much so that I toyed with the notion of writing about multiples of them. But Frieren was the one that won out because, well, that show's just crazy good. Look at that video length of me just talking about 2 characters. It's a dense show that rewards analysis. For your information, here's everything I watched last season and how I felt about them. Pause if you want to read. And while we're at it, here's the season stuff as well. And other than this moment right now, you're probably not going to hear me talk about this season past this. I mean, I could talk about Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night because I loved it so much, but it would really just be me talking about QE for 10 to 15 minutes, and we don't need that. If you know, you know. But while lots of stuff was good this season that I've watched, if something was good that I haven't, please let me know. None of them have grabbed me like Dungeon Meshi. Delicious in Dungeon, hereafter referred to by its Japanese title Dungeon Meshi because I don't really like its anglicized title. A fantasy cooking show by Ryoko Kui and animated by the very talented people over at Studio Trigger. I don't really keep up with animation studios specifically that often, but Trigger has an in-house style that lets you know from the jump that something was made by Trigger. Basically, Trigger's combination of great quality across their catalog and distinctive style means you notice when they release something. And Dungeon Meshi is one of the rare adapted works from a studio comprised of mostly originals. It speaks to the quality level Dungeon Meshi holds that Trigger would want to work on it. But what do I know? I'm no animator. What I do know is story stuff, so let's talk about that. Laios and his sister Falin are a part of an adventuring party that descends into the dungeon, which isn't really given a more official name than that. The party wipes in an encounter with a red dragon, and Falin uses what power she has left to teleport the party out of the dungeon. But Falin does not follow, presumably eaten by the dragon in the moments after the spell was cast. To add insult to injury, some party members disband on the spot, leaving Laios short of his strongest and most skilled members in combat, but more importantly, he's also short on money. Normally this would signal a moment for the party to regroup and prepare, perhaps do some quests for gold. But with Falin literally in the dragon's digestive tract, they must descend into the dungeon immediately if they have any hope of saving her. So, they do so, with Laios declaring to the others they must eat monsters in the dungeon to survive, a move his party has some reluctance towards. They soon after meet Senshi, a dwarf who happens to be quite knowledgeable on monster cuisine, who decides to aid Laios and crew as cook and dungeon ecologist. Lacking the strength of their most combat-worthy members, they dive into the dungeon, ill-prepared in the traditional sense, but working with copious amounts of knowledge on monsters and how to eat them. Dungeon Meshi's pitch is fusing the cooking show with a fantasy world, along with a generous helping of dungeon ecology. As an example, here is a slime. Low level, but still dangerous. Marcel thinks to herself at this moment that her first death in the dungeon was to a slime, so they're no joke. We then see how to kill it efficiently, its organ structure, how it is prepared for various dishes, how slime is prepared and used in normal society, and we will continue to see its use in later dishes. There's a large attention to detail on almost every level, from the monsters and how they connect to the world, fun facts about them and how to cook them of course, but also character designs, how the party sees each other, how their clothing has been modified to work better in a dungeon environment, and how those outfits change to reflect changes to their characters and environment as the story continues. It is great fun and invites you to be curious about these creatures, thinking of them not purely as dangerous demons and devils, but animals, fulfilling a role in a larger ecosystem, and to be curious about their place in that hierarchy, and of course, how to prepare them for eating. And while that is all well and good, I wouldn't have made a video about it if that's all the show was. There's something I haven't seen being talked about in detail on YouTube that the funny folks over on the Tumblr have zeroed in on pretty hard, and it's that this man seems to be deeply neurodivergent. Whoa, I've never had that response before. In literally every anime video I've made so far, I've said that some character in some show is autistic, and I get why people have in the past argued I'm wrong in this regard. I just project onto these characters because we share a difficulty in social situations, among other things, and since I'm autistic, I see autism in them as well, but it's okay if you disagree. I mean, I disagree with you too, but that's fine, we don't have to agree on everything. But on this, I will not budge. Laios is autistic. His behavior is extremely in keeping with an autistic person, and these traits hold an important role in his arc, his backstory, and the overall story of the show and manga. But honestly, I didn't notice any of that while watching initially, outside of my typical, they're so me, kidding, until the big episode. Y'all know the one, where the mission of the series changes forever, multiple people die in a brutal conflict, and Laios experiences an emotional defeat that hit pretty close to home for me and other ND people I know. The show has multiple characters and moments that closely mirror aspects of various autistic experiences, and I would like to talk about them here, and why, honestly, this is f***ing amazing. Nothing has ever scratched the autistic itch like Dungeon Meshi has in terms of describing my experience so far. So I just want to gush. I just want to gush, okay? That's what I'm here for. That's what you're here for. I'm gonna gush. It's gushing time. But before the gush begins, quick disclaimer about my part in all this. I am a high-functioning autistic person, and as a result, cannot speak to the experiences of low-functioning autistic peoples, or those for which feel that autism is a disability. I was definitely lower functioning as a child, I had issues speaking, and was prone to extreme temper tantrums all the way into adulthood, but now that I'm an adult and don't have older folks forcing into situations that make my brain scream, I have a much better handle on myself. Honestly, I feel like that'd be true for all autistic people in general. Give them the tools they need to deal with their divergences. If a child doesn't like loud sounds, give them earplugs, stuff like that. But that's me speaking from a high-functioning viewpoint again. Autism is a spectrum, and literally everyone has a different set of strengths and weaknesses. Even within Dungeon Meshi, this is true. So my experience is just one drop of water in the ocean, and I am in no way representative of my entire demographic. In fact, even the use of low-functioning versus high-functioning ruffles some feathers within the community, so this is all just to say, it's a complex and extremely varied set of mental conditions that we're all trying to figure out together, trying to get better representation and conditions while not killing each other in the process like any good demographic struggle. Remember, I'm a human, not a monolith. You get 5 autistic people in the room, you're going to hear 7 opinions, okay? But yeah, let's get into the show. Laios Tauden is a rather standard and, dare I say, stereotypical depiction of the autistic man. That's not to say that he's a negative stereotype like a lot of our representation tends to be, but he comfortably fits into a lot of the tropes we see or repeat about autistic people in media. His lack of social awareness, coupled with his bad judge of character, which I put in quotes because I'd characterize it as Laios looking for the good in everyone. Difference of perspective, really. If you're a pragmatist or an optimist, you'll arrive on opposite sides of this spectrum. Also, and this cannot be overstated, his hyperfixation on his interests and willingness to spout fun facts as soon as he thinks of them, no matter the situation. You can see his tactlessness on display here. There's a lot of that traditional Sheldon Cooper style wait, stop! Let me finish! There's a lot of overlap between Laios and the Antichrist of autistic representation, but whereas Mr. Cooper's various neurodivergencies are the butts of a joke for their neurotypical audience, Laios feels more empathetic to the struggle. He doesn't misunderstand the situation and then the laugh track tells us to laugh at the funny weird man. He misunderstands and we see both his thought process and the one of the person with him. It's a joke to be sure, but not one where Laios is othered. If Laios upsets his party, he is upset that he has done so. He very much wants his team to be a cohesive unit and endeavors to improve in his communication and leadership. He just has a habit of fixating on his interest and getting carried away, that's all. That's essentially the motto of this channel. Get carried away by your interests. Anyway, Laios has a particularly dogmatic attention span towards his one true love, monsters. But he is consistent in trying to understand and cater to the needs of his fellows, and to his sister. Marcel's hard lines on monsters are rarely crossed by Laios, and though he tests where that line is, he is careful and caring to have her consent. Except for the one episode where he doesn't. God damn it, Laios! He respects and values Chilchuk's opinion a great deal, and similarly has immense respect for Senchi's knowledge of his craft, even if they have their differing opinions on if you could truly treat a monster as an animal. All this together means that, even though Laios seems like a stereotypical depiction, it's done with empathy and respect to his humanity and agency, and the humanity of others. He is a golden standard for how to do this type of character right, producing someone whose autistic traits are a source of humor, but doesn't exist to be a joke. We can see Laios in ourselves and laugh at ourselves through him, and also love him for his eccentricities. But while the bulk of the audience feels this way about Laios, the same cannot be said about the other characters. 2 characters in particular hold negative views of Laios, Shuro and Kabru. Shuro is extremely important to this conversation, so we'll talk about him in more detail later. Let's first look at Kabru. Kabru stands as everything Laios is not, charismatic and gifted at reading social cues, and at his strongest in the political theater of humans, and also just so happens to be gifted at taking them down if he needs to. He is, however, abysmal at fighting monsters, to the point that our first 2 interactions with his party involved them being wiped by whatever beasts they were facing before Laios' crew happened by. Kabru is the perfect foil, being to humans what Laios is to monsters. The fun part is, all of Kabru's social magic fails him when he meets Laios, seemingly being completely unable to read him. Now why might that be? Despite the stark differences between these two, Kabru is autistic too, but in a way that's both less represented in visual media and harder to get right. From my place on the spectrum, again, a level 1 autism viewpoint, I would describe autism as a disconnect from the social laws neurotypical people seem to know inherently. Whereas everyone else seemed to understand how to function and how interactions are meant to go, I had to pay attention and learn, either through making mistakes or observation, how things like conversations, jokes, etiquette are supposed to be performed. For neurotypicals, imagine you go to a dinner and discover only upon arrival that this is not an ordinary dinner, but in fact a high-class fine dining experience. The 5 forks and spoons, the spaghetti entree, which is a trap by the way, the whole shebang. You don't know how to use these utensils, how to eat anything, and you are aware that if you make a mistake, these people will notice, and it will affect your reputation. Hey, maybe they're nice and they'll teach you how to do it, but maybe they'll mock you, or maybe they'll tell all of your friends that you don't know fine dining and treat you like a homeless person forever. This is what it's like to be an autistic child learning conversation, and they gotta learn quick, because there are a lot of edge cases and intricacies to a system that's more or less alien to them. Lots of autistic people have a hard time getting a hold of this, which can lead to a more Laios-style person. But what if you have a knack for observation? What if your special interest ends up being the system of social etiquette which you are an alien to? In that case, you may get someone like Kabru. Kabru's magic around the social and political isn't just because he's a charismatic guy. He can figure out what people want and how to change the situation in his favor. The fish illusion fight illustrates this beautifully. Despite both friend and foe appearing as aquatic creatures, Kabru is able to tell exactly who everyone is based off their body language and actions alone, and is able to dispatch them all with specific moves that non-violently put them out of commission until he can find the true enemy in this situation. It's a skill that serves him very well in the social and political settings of mid and late season 1 respectively, but there are some significant drawbacks to this knowledge, both in the show and in real life. If you had to learn the social rules, then you can use them to your advantage. Short-circuit the programming of others to gain what you want when you want it, smile when it is needed, follow the rules, perform the role of someone in need, or a colleague, or a friend, all in order to get by, morphing your mannerisms, not to fit your feelings, but the feelings most useful for the moment. Now, it's tempting to call these things manipulation tactics. I've done so in previous drafts of this script, but while I don't think that's entirely false, it's not true either. There's this concept called masking, which I previously called the mask in other videos, which represents an autistic person essentially going undercover, masking their autistic traits and feigning neurotypical behaviors so they can pass through social situations unabated. We may do this to not receive ridicule, or to more easily fit into a social situation, or to sneak past a social situation where if we acted the way we wanted to, others may be uncomfortable or alienated. For the normies, think about how you would act at an office job. That level of professionalism you must maintain anytime you're engaging with someone else, and that's a bit like masking. Running off that example, putting on an emotional affect for your job can be pretty exhausting after doing it all day, right? It's like Barry said, it's exhausting to fly if you do it all the time, but some people try to anyway. As a result, they can burn out, get agitated, or come home and just become a toad, not unlike your typical office worker after their job. Major difference though, this is a person who is coming home from an 8-hour shift. And what I'm talking about is every day, from the moment you see your first person till you enter your room, no days off, forever. As a result of this, masking could be a touchy subject in certain neurotypical circles. Let me tell you, during the COVID times, wearing a mask was neurodivergent euphoria for me because I didn't have to smile at people. Just making no faces all day long made me truly very happy. And I had never noticed that before, how tired holding the mask up could be. For Laios, you may note, he literally never exhibits a mask, but for Kabru, it's all mask, all the time. Dungeon Meshi uses this mask against us when introducing Kabru to the viewer. We see this plucky adventuring party and their charismatic lead, who seems level-headed, kind, and conscientious of the needs of his party, but after the fish illusion fight, we see a side of Kabru that was hidden from us, and hidden from Laios when they finally meet in person. Kabru isn't a plucky, friendly adventurer, but a man from a broken home who's experienced a lot of hardship, and he hides all that for his own gain. We see him put on a few different masks over the course of the show to influence those around him, and it's usually very effective. Kabru is an enigmatic person, keeping the cards close even when he's the focal character, and his skill at dispatching humans suggests a more sinister backstory than we ever hear about. But all this said, he does want what's best for the people around him. He cares for his party enough to not injure them in the illusion fight, He debates with the elves to save the island from whatever damage they may cause, and his interest in Laios, while framed as sinister initially, seems to be from a place of curiosity, wanting to know what's up with this prominent adventurer on the island. Issue is, there's almost nothing up with Laios that he wouldn't tell you outright. If Kabru's power is understanding the social sphere perfectly, Laios' social ineptitude makes that power worthless. The one real interaction these characters have finds Kabru put through one of his worst nightmares and fully considers killing Laios on the spot to escape it, all because Laios is too earnest and Kabru cannot figure out what he's getting at. Laios wins the game by simply not playing, making Kabru putty in his hands. Though you'll never hear me say this again, sometimes the curtains really are just blue. It's easy to see Kabru as a bad person, giving his sinister presentation, keeping his cards close to the chest, and the mask can seem a lot like manipulation from a neurotypical standpoint. And it can be, but it's also a means of survival, and he uses the skill for what he thinks is best for the island and his party. His views and strengths are just different from Laios's, and that's really the story of all the characters in aggregate. They are all very different people with different strengths and weaknesses, and even a party as small and ill-equipped as Laios's can succeed when using their knowledge to their advantage. It's a lot of what drove me to continue watching the first season of Goblin Slayer some 6 years ago. For a guy with no magic, he sure knows how to use his brain to solve a fight. Kabru uses his mask for what he sees as good. And sure, you probably shouldn't switch your mask on the fly to influence the emotions of the neurotypicals. PSA, don't manipulate people. But at least he isn't using it for his own selfish gain. As of episode 24 of the anime. That's a lesson any observant autistic person must learn, as I have. Though I don't like seeing myself in Kabru, I really do. More than Laios overall, but the strongest moment of autistic representation that happens in the show is in the big episode. Episode 17, the one that completely shattered my conception of Laios and the show as a whole, and the reason why this video exists. Now, there's a huge paradigm shift that happens in this episode, which, usefully for me, has nothing to do with this video's topic, so I don't have to spoil it for you. If you haven't seen the show, you really need to, because I'm about to talk about what I think is Season 1's most emotionally heavy moment. And I'm not even gonna get into the cool plot shit that happens. You're in for a treat, for real. Shoto returns to the dungeon and reconvenes with Laios' party in the search for Falin. Laios gets him up to speed, it doesn't go well. Paradigm shift happens, and now Shoto is having an all-out, one-sided screaming match with Laios. All of his work so far has done nothing to solve the situation, and Shoto is provoking Laios, demanding answers on how Laios plans to solve this mess. Shoto hasn't eaten in days. He's tired, and after the paradigm shift, he's completely lost his nerve. Even after Laios comes up with a plan, albeit a long shot, Shoto can't help but berate him further, prompting Laios to slap him and starting an all-out fight between the two. Here, the cultural layer begins to reveal itself to us. Shoto is an Eastern tall man, and Laios a Western one. I should probably explain what a tall man is. Okay, so human is the umbrella term for the various species in this setting that are sapient. And our particular human species in the real world in this setting is the tall men, okay? Anyway, Shoto's from the east, Laios from the west, and this argument, and indeed their entire relationship, is steeped in their cultural practices. Shoto comes from a high context culture, where subtle social cues are used to imply their opinions on a subject, more so than outright saying it, something his Western compatriots often don't pick up on. Laios comes from a culture that's more forward, meaning what they say, saying what they mean. Laios will often butt in on Shoto doing his own thing, and though Shoto would signal he was not wanted there, Laios would not pick up on these clues. There's a chance Laios wouldn't, even if Shoto said it outright, to be honest. This cultural difference is what led to this moment, as years of pent-up frustration built within Shoto for a man who was both unaware and unable to understand Shoto's social intricacies. Now, likely weeks into a mental breakdown and starving, Shoto just starts letting it out, gushing his malice like a stream, and Laios does not take it lying down. In this moment, Laios asks the question here. If Shoto has felt this way the whole time, then why didn't he say something sooner? And there's that cultural layer again. Shoto did do that with subtlety and grace, things Laios has no grasp of. Shoto blames Laios for being so thick-headed, which Laios counters by saying how could he not be excited to make a new friend? Though we don't know this yet, and I'm about to talk about the final episode of the season, fair warning, Laios has never fit in anywhere he went until he made it to the island. He has experienced constant ostracization and bullying in his life, and outside of his sister, he had no one. Then he finally meets someone with the same goals and interests, or at least goals that align with his, and his excitement at making a true friend overwhelms him. Imagine then, hearing that first friend telling you that they've always hated you. I'm sure everyone has had that paranoid thought before. What if the people around me don't like me? What if they secretly hate me behind my back, and no one enjoys me for me? What if their feelings are festering until they explode and reveal they've hated me all this time? I'm sure we've all felt this feeling before, but unfortunately, I've had this happen to me. More than once. People who didn't tell me that something is wrong and it blew up in my face, where before the blow up, I had no clue that there was even anything amiss. This is an experience that many autistic people in my life have had, and it can be traumatic. It was for me. When I finished this episode, it put me in a terrible mood, because it was a mirror to an awful part of the autistic experience thrown right in my face. Laios and Kabru have been pretty fun examinations of two different autistic archetypes so far, but this was cold, hard reality coming for Laios, as it had for me, and it felt like the show was strangling me. I have probably never in my life had anything represent my experience so perfectly on the screen before this. Representation. That's a dirty word for some of you, right? I am a white man, so most of the world is made in my image, but I do and have thought throughout my life that representation matters, but in an intellectual way, you know? If there are characters from a minority status, or shows being completely comprised of non-majority characters, this is a good thing. It's good for other voices and ideas to end up on TV. Not to pander, mind you, but to hold a variety of voices and viewpoints, represent as much of the human condition as possible. And no, this doesn't mean all shows will be replaced by minority voices. I'm sure there'll still be white people shows. If you say that, I think you're operating in bad faith. But again, I'm a white guy. Most media already represents me, so this struggle isn't something I have a personal stake in. If other minority groups are represented in something, I am super happy for them, but I've never understood on an emotional level. Until Dungeon Meshi. Autism is not a well-represented condition in Western media. We have often been depicted as childish, robotic, emotionless, or backwards, which leads to a lot of our positive autistic representation being characters that aren't autistic at all. We just claim them, which is why I did in some of my previous videos. But Laios, Kabru, and the third I still haven't gotten to, represent so many aspects of autism, from the good to the bad to the ugly, that I felt truly understood by someone on the screen, and the people behind it, in a way that I never have before. My particular struggles displayed across multiple characters, my difficulties, my achievements, my traumas, allow me to commiserate with Kabru, laugh at Laios while laughing at myself, and re-experience a couple of painful memories through Laios experiencing the same. Senshi was my favorite character before this, but after, I will always be in Laios' corner. And I may just kill and eat you if you threaten him. There is another layer of complexity to this fight that I've left out so far, and that's the central character in this triangle, Falin, Laios' sister in Shuro's love. Laios only found out days ago that Shuro loves his sister, despite this being a relationship developing over years at this point, and Shuro's rage has a lot to do with Falin's disappearance. He had asked her to return to the east with him, but he was still waiting on her answer when she disappeared. But here's the thing about Falin. She has a similar interest in monsters as Laios does, but more specifically focused on spirits. She seems to understand their wishes easier than most people, and is particularly gifted in magic that deals with the spirits, such as wards or turning undead, though this is far kinder than the Dungeons & Dragons equivalent. All the flashbacks we see of Falin show her to be caring towards the monsters, treating them and the dungeons they call home as their natural habitat, to be respected and maintained if possible. This may be part of the secret behind her extremely powerful magical ability. She doesn't see the spirits as a tool, but creatures to live in harmony with. There's something to be said about how the small dungeon that Falin cared for is sustainable and strong, and the dungeons that are mined for monster parts and loot become festering and dangerous to their communities. There's an environmental metaphor in there. Regardless, Falin is fascinated by monsters, regards them with care and interest, and is interested in what Laios' party gets up to before the paradigm shift. She exhibits a lot of the same traits as Laios, and includes a lot of his eccentricities and even his same lack of social understanding, which is to say, Falin is autistic too. Her archetype seems to be another popular one in media, the autistic savant, though she really isn't on screen long enough for us to explore this too deeply, other than to say everyone in the show cares about her, loves or respects her, and she's considered by Marcial to be an equal, if not better mage in certain respects. Certainly not in the same area as Marcial succeeds, being a damage caster to Falin's support. Her autism doesn't seem to deprive her of social capital in the same way Laios' does, though. I mean, think about it. Basically, every character who knows her is out looking for her. The show straight up doesn't happen if everybody doesn't care about Falin, and I think that's extremely intentional. Autism, its diagnosis, and how it interacts with gender is a pretty big concern in the community. For every 4+ boys diagnosed, you get 1 girl, and that isn't because it's a male-centric disorder like colorblindness. No, girls are just lost in the system, with neuropsychologists sometimes excusing their symptoms as something else or not noticing them entirely. There's research being done all the time about how autism manifests differently in boys and girls, and why these quote-unquote lost girls are a thing. And there are a lot of theories. The things autistic girls tend to obsess over as children are considered normal for girls to enjoy, and their symptoms tend to be more subdued overall. And while this article and paper didn't think about why that might be the case, entering opinion territory here, I think it's a societal pressure. Ask any lady you know well enough and they can tell you that there's a social pressure to behave the right way, and a stigma if you get it wrong, and that starts very young. There's a decent chance that by the time girls are old enough to be in school, they've already internalized a need to bury some of their weird behaviors and come off as normal. Heading back into research territory, oftentimes these girls do a good job of going with the social flow and following the rules that they picked up on. Look people in the eyes more, do what the other girls are doing, fit in. They can pass for a while, but as they get older, the mask gets tiring, as we have all experienced, leading to a known phenomenon of late diagnoses for teen and young adults. Sometimes even further. It's a real issue and makes having autism that much harder for females. But what does this have to do with Falin? Again, we don't see much of her in the show given her medical condition, but what we do see shows she is close to Laios in fixation and social acumen. What I'm about to say might be controversial, but the reason why Falin gets away with it where Laios does not is because the traits she exhibits are considered valuable for a woman to have. She's a demure young woman, speaks softly, and doesn't overpronounce her interests. The traits that Laios exhibits loudly and proudly reside within Falin, they're just quieter. Despite them being very similar people, what Shuro finds annoying about Laios, he loves about Falin. The irony. Those are all of the disparate pieces of the scene coming together. The stark and painful representation of one of autism's lowest points, fusing with the cultural differences between East and West that produce further difficulties for the people involved, and how our societal conceptions of gender influence how autistic traits can be desirable for some and not for others. Culture, gender, and the mind coming to a three-way intersection to communicate a lot of harsh truths about the realities of living with autism that I have never seen before this. And for that, I have to commend the writer for putting this to paper, and Trigger for putting it to the screen. Thank you so much for making this work. It meant more to me than I ever thought it would. And the cat girl's cute too, 7 out of 7. So, that's Dungeon Meshi. Hopefully that provided some insight to the autistic side of the show. If you happen to be neurotypical, I have to imagine for y'all that all of this is like pulling a rock off the ground and seeing a whole new world of bugs and worms underneath. This metaphor isn't weird, right? Should I keep this? I feel like I did a pretty good job with that one. I went the whole video talking about autism, and not once did I bring up applied behavioral analysis. Thank you for watching to the very end. I am shoving a cookie into the disk drive now. Just let me know when that goes through. I would like to thank my patrons for being neat and cool and for allowing me the ability to keep doing this, along with my regular viewers. If you want your name on this list, want to see my videos early, or just receive updates and disparate random thoughts I have on occasion earlier than others, consider donating on Patreon, because it is helpful for keeping me above the poverty line, and I like that. If you know of any other shows with good autistic characters in it, whether truly autistic or your headcanon, please throw that stuff my way. We are obviously not suffering from too much autistic representation, to say nothing about it being good, and I don't think anyone would complain if we saw more stories about or for autistic people, myself included. Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and remember, the only true ABA loves a key, baby!